The crash. Captain Alex Carter tightened his grip on the control stick as his spacecraft shuddered violently. The cockpit lights flickered, and alarms blared in his ears. "Come on, hold together," Alex muttered, sweat trickling down his forehead. He was alone, far from any nearby colonies, on a standard reconnaissance mission. The stars outside his windows spun wildly as his ship spiraled out of control. A meteor storm had come out of nowhere, slamming into his vessel before he had a chance to react. One of the engines had taken a direct hit, and now gravity was pulling him toward a mysterious, blue-green planet below. The ship's systems sputtered and died. "Mayday, mayday. This is Captain Alex Carter, requesting immediate assistance," he said, tapping furiously at the communication panel. Only static responded. Alex clenched his jaw. He was on his own. Through the cockpit glass, the planet's surface rushed up to meet him. Thick clouds swirled, hiding what lay beneath. His training kicked in. He flipped switches and adjusted the trajectory, doing everything he could to slow the descent. Braced for impact, he whispered to himself, tightening his harness. Moments later, the ship tore through the atmosphere, the hull glowing red-hot. The trees of a dense jungle flashed by as he crashed hard into the ground. The impact jolted him forward, and everything went dark. Alex groaned as he opened his eyes. His head throbbed, and his body ached from the crash. Smoke filled the cockpit, and sparks danced across the control panels. He quickly unbuckled his harness and forced open the exit hatch. The cool air outside hit him like a wave, carrying unfamiliar scents. He stumbled out, coughing as he looked around. His ship had carved a trench through the alien landscape, leaving broken trees and burning foliage in its wake. The sky above was a deep purple, with 2 suns setting on the horizon. Towering trees with glowing blue leaves surrounded him, casting eerie shadows. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the jungle, soft clicks and distant howls. Alex retrieved a survival pack from the wreckage, slinging it over his shoulder. His pistol, the only weapon he had, was strapped to his side. He scanned the area. No signs of intelligent life. At least not yet. As he walked away from the wreck, the realization sank in. He was stranded. No backup, no rescue team, and no way to call for help. Still, Alex was not the type to give up. "First things first, find shelter," he said, his voice steady. The jungle was alive with movement, but nothing approached him directly. The glowing plants pulsed faintly as if responding to his presence. Despite the strange beauty of the place, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Suddenly, a sound, soft, almost like footsteps, rustled behind him. Alex spun around, gripping his pistol tightly. But there was nothing there, only the trees and the fading light. His instincts screamed at him. Someone, or something, was nearby. He pressed forward, moving carefully. The jungle grew darker as the suns dipped below the horizon. Strange, bioluminescent flowers lit his path, but the further he walked, the more uneasy he felt. After a short hike, he found a clearing surrounded by tall rock formations. It seemed defensible, a good spot to rest for the night. As Alex set down his pack and started a small fire, he heard it again. Soft footsteps, this time circling the clearing. He stood, pistol in hand, eyes scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" he called out. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Alex's grip tightened on his weapon. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. Then, from the shadows, figures emerged, tall, graceful, and unlike anything he had ever seen. They were humanoid but taller, their skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. They wore no clothing, but their bodies were painted with strange, swirling patterns. Long hair, dark as midnight, cascaded down their backs. Alex lowered his pistol slightly, careful not to appear threatening. One of them stepped forward, eyes locking with his. Her gaze was sharp, intelligent, and unreadable. She raised her hand. palm facing him. Alex took a cautious step back. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "this just got interesting." The woman's expression didn't change. The rest of the group fanned out, blocking his exit. Alex knew one thing for certain: he wasn't alone anymore. First encounter. The fire crackled softly, casting long shadows across the clearing. Captain Alex Carter sat with his back to a large boulder, eyes fixed on the figures emerging from the jungle. They moved gracefully, almost silently, as if the ground bent to their will. Alex counted at least 7 of them, all tall, athletic, and glowing faintly under the alien moonlight. Their bodies were adorned with markings that shimmered like liquid silver. The one in front, the apparent leader, held his gaze. She was taller than the others, her muscles defined, and her piercing green eyes reflected the fire's glow. Alex didn't raise his weapon, but he didn't holster it either. "Okay," he said slowly, his voice calm but firm. "I don't mean any harm. I'm just visiting." The lead woman took another step forward. Her long hair, braided with leaves and stones, swayed with her movement. She raised her hand again, palm outward, but said nothing. Alex glanced at the others. They had spread out, forming a loose circle around him. Their faces were unreadable, neither hostile nor welcoming. "You don't talk, huh?" Alex tried again. His voice echoed through the clearing, met only by the soft rustling of leaves. A soft hum filled the air, like distant chimes. At first, Alex thought it was coming from the jungle, but then he realized. The sound was coming from them. It wasn't speech, but something else. A vibration. Telepathy. Alex's eyes narrowed as the leader approached. She knelt by the fire, carefully studying him as if trying to piece together what he was. For a moment, Alex allowed himself to relax. He lowered the pistol and rested it on his knee. "Captain Alex Carter," he said, tapping his chest lightly. "Alex." He pointed at her. "And you are?" The woman tilted her head. Then, slowly, she placed her hand over her heart. "Xena," a voice echoed softly in Alex's head, though her lips never moved. Alex stiffened. "Did you just?" The voice came again, clearer this time. "Xena." Alex exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. He pointed to the others. "Friends of yours." Xena's eyes flickered to the group behind her. One of them, slightly shorter with bright violet eyes, stepped forward. She repeated the same gesture over her heart. "Lyra." The others followed, offering their names one by one. Xena, Lyra, Kira, Erin. Alex committed the names to memory, though he doubted he'd ever fully understand what was happening. "All right," he said, standing carefully. "Nice to meet you all." The circle around him tightened. The women watched his every movement, their eyes tracking him with animal-like precision. Xena gestured toward the jungle, motioning for him to follow. Alex hesitated. "You want me to go with you?" Xena nodded once. Alex weighed his options. Staying alone in the jungle didn't seem like a smart move, and these women, though intimidating, hadn't shown any signs of aggression. He slung his pack over his shoulder. "Lead the way." They moved swiftly through the dense foliage, Alex trailing slightly behind. The jungle seemed to part for them, as if the planet itself recognized them. Alex, on the other hand, had to duck under low-hanging branches and sidestep roots that seemed determined to trip him. Lyra glanced back occasionally, her expression curious but cautious. "So, you all live out here?" Alex asked, unsure if anyone could hear him. Xena didn't answer, but she led him to a narrow pathway that twisted through the trees. After nearly an hour of hiking, the jungle opened to reveal something Alex hadn't expected. A village, though village felt like the wrong word. Towering structures of stone and crystal rose high into the canopy, connected by rope bridges and glowing vines. The buildings seemed to grow naturally from the ground, blending seamlessly with the surrounding environment. In the center, a massive tree stood, its trunk wide enough to house an entire building within it. Soft blue lights spiraled up its bark, pulsing in time with the hum Alex had heard earlier. Dozens of Amazons moved through the village, their movements fluid and effortless. Some carried baskets of strange fruits, while others sharpened weapons made from a mix of bone and crystal. Alex stopped at the edge of the clearing, taking it all in. "Not exactly what I expected," he muttered under his breath. Xena gestured toward a stone platform near the base of the tree. "You will stay here," the voice echoed in his head. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Stay here? For how long?" Xena didn't answer. Before Alex could press further, Lyra stepped forward, offering him a piece of fruit. It glowed faintly, like everything else in this strange place. Alex hesitated before taking a bite. Sweet, almost like honey. "Thanks," he said. Lyra gave him a slight nod before vanishing into the village. As Alex sat on the edge of the platform, watching the village bustle around him, one thought lingered in his mind. He wasn't sure if he had just found shelter, or if he had walked straight into something far more dangerous. The test. Alex awoke to the soft hum of the village around him. The twin suns had just begun to rise, casting golden light through the alien canopy. For a moment, he forgot where he was. The strange, glowing village felt like something out of a dream, until he noticed Xena standing a few feet away, watching him in silence. "Morning," Alex said, rubbing his eyes. Xena didn't respond. Instead, she motioned for him to follow. Alex sighed, stretching his arms as he stood. He had slept surprisingly well despite being surrounded by alien strangers. As he followed Xena through the village, he noticed the other Amazons watching him carefully. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to quiet suspicion. Whatever hospitality they had shown him last night, it was clear he hadn't fully earned their trust. Xena led him to a large clearing at the far edge of the village. In the center stood a stone archway, ancient and covered in alien runes. Weapons, shields, and strange artifacts lined the area, suggesting this was some sort of training ground. Lyra and the other Amazons had gathered, standing in a semicircle around the archway. "What's this?" Alex asked, eyeing the worn battle scars on the stone. Xena turned to face him. Her eyes met his, and once again, her voice echoed directly in his mind. "You must prove yourself." Alex crossed his arms. "I figured this wasn't just a friendly tour." Xena stepped aside, gesturing toward the archway. Beyond it, a narrow path led into a dark, misty section of the jungle. The vines and undergrowth seemed thicker, twisted unnaturally around the trees. Even from a distance, Alex could sense the danger that lurked beyond. He squinted at the shadows. "Let me guess, there's something nasty in there." Lyra stepped forward, her expression serious. She held out a weapon, a long curved blade made of bone and crystal. Alex took it carefully, testing the weight. It felt light but sturdy. Xena's voice returned. "There is a beast that roams these lands, one that threatens the balance of our village. You will face it." Alex glanced at her. "You want me to go monster hunting alone?" Xena nodded. "If you survive, you may stay." Alex exhaled sharply, wiping his hand down his face. He wasn't sure if this was some form of initiation or if they genuinely needed help. Either way, it didn't seem like he had much choice. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's get this over with." The jungle beyond the archway felt different. Thicker, darker. Even the glowing plants seemed to dim as Alex walked further in. The only sounds were his footsteps and the soft rustle of unseen creatures moving in the underbrush. He gripped the bone blade tighter, scanning his surroundings. "Okay, Alex," he whispered to himself. "Just like training simulations. Except, not at all." A low growl echoed through the trees. Alex froze, heart pounding. The growl came again, closer this time. He turned slowly, raising the blade. From the shadows, a massive creature emerged. Its body was feline but covered in sleek black scales that reflected the faint jungle light. 4 glowing red eyes fixated on him, and a row of sharp spines ran down its back. Of course, it's huge, Alex muttered. The beast circled him, muscles rippling under its scales. Alex took a slow step back, trying to put distance between them. Easy there, big guy. I'm just passing through. The creature didn't seem interested in negotiations. It lunged. Alex barely dodged, rolling to the side as the beast's claws raked across the ground. He slashed with the blade, cutting into the creature's side, but it barely seemed to notice. Great, Alex grunted. Now you're mad. The beast roared, swiping at him again. Alex ducked, slicing at its legs, aiming for the joints. This time, the creature staggered, letting out a sharp cry. Alex pressed the advantage, striking again. The blade cut deeper, drawing iridescent blue blood that hissed when it hit the ground. The beast turned, snarling, but Alex was faster. He drove the blade into its side, twisting hard. With one final growl, the creature collapsed, breathing heavily. Alex stepped back, watching as the beast's form dissolved into a glowing mist, leaving behind only a crystalline core. He knelt, picking up the crystal. It pulsed faintly in his hand, warm to the touch. Well, that wasn't so bad, he said, though his shaking hands betrayed the lie. When Alex returned to the village, the Amazons were waiting. He tossed the crystal core to Xena's feet, dusting off his hands. Your monster's taken care of. For the first time, Xena's stoic expression softened. She bent down, picking up the core and holding it to the light. Lyra stepped forward, smiling slightly. You fight well. Alex smirked. Yeah, I've been told. Xena met his gaze once more, and for the first time, she nodded in approval. You may stay. Alex exhaled, relief washing over him. As the villagers dispersed, Lyra lingered. She handed him another glowing fruit, the faintest hint of amusement in her eyes. Alex chuckled. Let me guess. Another test tomorrow. Lyra tilted her head. Perhaps. As she walked away, Alex sat by the fire, watching the stars overhead. He had survived the first trial, but something told him this was just the beginning. Secrets of the tribe. The village hummed softly under the light of the twin moons. Captain Alex Carter sat near the central fire, the warmth soothing his sore muscles. His fight with the beast had left him with bruises, but he had survived. More importantly, he had gained the tentative trust of the Amazons, or at least he thought he had. Lyra sat across from him, sharpening a curved blade with practiced ease. Her violet eyes flicked up every so often, watching him carefully but saying nothing. So, Alex began, breaking the silence. What was that thing I killed out there? Some kind of wild animal. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She wiped the blade on her leg, her expression hard to read. Not an animal, her voice echoed in his mind, soft but clear. A shadowfang, a remnant of the old war. Alex raised an eyebrow. Old war? You mean with the aliens who left those ruins I saw on the way here? Lyra's gaze sharpened. Before she could answer, Xena approached from the shadows, holding the crystalline core Alex had retrieved. The crystal pulsed faintly, its glow reflecting in Xena's green eyes. She sat beside Lyra, placing the core between them. You are observant, Xena said, her voice like distant thunder in Alex's head. But there are things we do not speak of easily. Alex frowned, leaning forward. Why not? I'm here now. If I'm going to survive on this planet, I need to know what I'm dealing with. Xena studied him for a long moment. Finally, she gestured toward the large tree at the village's center. Come. Alex followed Xena and Lyra toward the ancient tree, its bark glowing faintly under the moonlight. A narrow opening at its base led inside, and as they stepped through, the air grew cooler. Crystals lined the walls, casting soft blue light. The interior was larger than Alex had expected. A vast chamber filled with carved stone tablets and relics that looked thousands of years old. Strange symbols covered the walls, and in the center stood a massive statue of a figure resembling the Amazons, but different, taller, fiercer. Alex approached the statue, running his hand along the smooth stone. Who is this? Xena's eyes lingered on the figure. She was the first, Xena said. Our creator, a warrior who led our people against the Sky Invaders. Alex glanced at her. Sky Invaders. Lyra spoke this time, her voice quieter than Xena's. Long ago, they came from the stars. Not unlike you. But they did not come in peace. Alex exhaled, staring at the statue. Let me guess. They tried to take over. Xena nodded. They sought to harvest this world. Its life, its power. We fought back. Alex looked around at the carvings. Scenes of battle lined the walls. Amazonian warriors fighting strange, armored creatures that resembled machines more than living beings. One carving caught his eye. It showed the Shadowfang, the beast he had killed, standing beside the invaders. Alex stepped closer. The Shadowfang was one of theirs. Lyra nodded. A weapon left behind. When the invaders fell, their creations remained. Some evolved. Others became corrupted by the planet itself. Alex crossed his arms. So these things are still out there. Xena's gaze darkened. Yes. And some are far worse than the one you faced. Alex rubbed his neck. Great, and I assume that's why you all stay so close to the village. Lyra exchanged a glance with Xena before answering. We avoid the ruins. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes. Alex looked over his shoulder, as if he could see the jungle beyond the tree's walls. He had noticed the way the Amazons avoided certain paths when they traveled. Now it made sense. So what happens if someone wanders too far? Xena's expression hardened. They do not return. Silence hung between them for a long moment. Alex finally stepped back from the statue. You're telling me this because I'm not leaving, aren't you? Xena met his gaze. You have earned the right to stay, but this world will test you. More than once. Alex smirked, running a hand through his hair. I've been through worse. I can handle it. Lyra's eyes flickered with amusement. You are confident. That is good. But confidence alone will not save you. Alex chuckled. I'll take my chances. Xena placed the crystal core into a carved pedestal near the statue. The light from the crystal spread across the room, illuminating even more carvings, ones Alex hadn't noticed before. One carving showed a figure that looked suspiciously human, standing beside an Amazon warrior. Alex narrowed his eyes. Who's this? Xena's gaze lingered on the carving. The last human who came here. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Wait, there was another human. Lyra nodded. Long ago, he did not stay. Alex's mind raced with questions, but before he could ask, Xena began walking toward the exit. Come, she said. There is more to learn. As Alex followed, he couldn't help but wonder, who was the human that came before him? And why did he leave? The enemy awakens. The days passed quickly in the village, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something lurked just beyond the peaceful facade. He trained with the Amazons each morning, learning their ways, how to move silently through the jungle, how to read the shifting skies, and how to fight with weapons that hummed with strange energy. Yet even as he grew stronger, he sensed a quiet tension in the village. The Amazons were watchful, their eyes always drifting toward the dark jungle beyond the stone archway. Alex found himself gravitating toward Lyra. She was quieter than the others, but she seemed to trust him more, or at least tolerated his endless questions. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Alex found Lyra standing at the edge of the village, gazing out into the jungle. Expecting someone? Alex asked, approaching carefully. Lyra didn't turn. There is movement tonight. The air feels heavy. Alex glanced at the trees. The glowing plants that usually lit the jungle seemed dimmer. The wind carried an unsettling stillness. You think it's another Shadowfang? He asked. Lyra shook her head. No, worse. Alex frowned. Worse than the thing I killed last week." She finally looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting faint worry. The Shadowfang was alone, but there are others who come in numbers. They sleep deep within the ruins. If they wake. Her voice trailed off, but Alex understood. "They'll come for the village," he finished. Lyra nodded silently. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He sat near the fire, listening to the jungle. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl, felt closer than it should have. His instincts were screaming at him. Something was wrong. Then he heard it. A low hum, faint but unmistakable, rising from deep within the jungle. It wasn't natural. It sounded mechanical, like gears turning after centuries of stillness. Alex grabbed his blade and scanned the tree line. The humming grew louder. Moments later, Xena appeared beside him, her face calm, but her eyes sharp. "You hear it," she said. Alex nodded. "What is it?" Xena's gaze drifted toward the jungle. "The swarm is waking." Before Alex could respond, a flash of movement caught his eye. From the shadows, figures began to emerge. They were humanoid but twisted, metallic bodies covered in overgrowth, their limbs long and jagged. Their eyes glowed red, and strange symbols flickered across their armor. Alex tensed. "I'm guessing they're not friendly." Xena stepped forward, her blade glowing faintly. "They are the remnants of the invaders. Machines left to guard what is no longer theirs." Lyra appeared beside them, her expression grim. "They hunt anything that moves." Alex gripped his blade tighter. "So what's the plan? Wait for them to stroll into the village?" Xena shook her head. "No, we stop them here." Before Alex could protest, the first machine lunged forward, moving faster than he expected. Alex barely dodged the swipe, rolling to the side and slashing at its leg. Sparks flew as the blade connected, but the machine didn't slow. Lyra struck next, her blade slicing clean through its arm. The machine staggered, falling to the ground in pieces, but more emerged, their glowing eyes piercing through the jungle's darkness. Alex cursed under his breath. "There's too many of them." Xena's voice echoed in his mind. "We hold the line. The village cannot fall." The machines pressed forward, and the clearing erupted into chaos. Alex fought alongside the Amazons, using every trick he had learned in his military training. But these machines were relentless, adapting quickly to their attacks. As Alex drove his blade into another machine's chest, he noticed something strange. One of the machines wasn't attacking. It stood at the edge of the clearing, holding a small glowing artifact. "Lyra!" Alex shouted, pointing toward it. Lyra followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing. "That is a beacon." Alex's heart sank. "You mean they're calling for more?" Xena's voice cut through the chaos. "Destroy it. Now." Alex sprinted toward the machine, dodging between fighting Amazons and metallic enemies. The machine raised its arm, but Alex tackled it to the ground, wrestling for control of the beacon. The artifact pulsed wildly in his hands, sending a shock through his body. With a grunt, Alex plunged his blade into the machine's core. The light in its eyes faded, and the beacon shattered in his grip. As the beacon's glow died, the remaining machines faltered. One by one, they collapsed, their bodies crumbling into dust. Alex knelt, breathing heavily. Lyra approached, offering him her hand. "You stopped them," she said simply. Alex took her hand and stood, wiping sweat from his forehead. "For now. But I get the feeling that wasn't the last of them." Xena stepped forward, holding the broken beacon. "It was not," she confirmed. "The machines will rise again, and next time, they will be stronger." Alex stared at the beacon, his grip tightening around his blade. "Then we'll be ready," he said, his voice firm. Xena met his gaze, nodding in quiet approval. "Yes," she said softly. "We will." The plan. The village was quiet the next morning, but the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like the calm before a storm. Alex stood near the edge of the clearing, staring at the pile of broken machine parts scattered across the ground. The remnants of last night's battle lay twisted and lifeless, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. Xena approached him, her expression unreadable. She held the shattered beacon in her hand, turning it over carefully. "It will not be long before more arrive," she said, her voice drifting softly in his mind. "The machines are never truly destroyed. They always return." Alex crossed his arms, leaning against the trunk of a nearby tree. "You're saying they rebuild themselves?" Xena nodded. "Their cores lie dormant beneath the ruins. When one beacon falls, another awakens." Alex frowned. "So we're fighting an endless war." Xena met his gaze. "Only if we do nothing." Lyra joined them, her violet eyes sharp with quiet determination. "There may be a way to stop them," she said. "But it is dangerous." Alex smirked. "I'm starting to think danger is just part of life around here." Lyra ignored the comment, unfolding a cloth that revealed an old map. It was weathered and torn, the edges frayed, but the symbols were still clear. At the center of the map lay a sprawling ruin, larger than anything Alex had seen so far. Strange markings surrounded it, with jagged lines cutting through the image like cracks in stone. "What am I looking at?" Alex asked, crouching down for a better look. "The heart of the ruins," Lyra said. "The machines were created there long ago. If we destroy the core that powers them, they will no longer rise." Alex narrowed his eyes. "You're talking about shutting down an entire army at its source." Xena knelt beside him, tracing one of the lines with her finger. "It has been tried before." None returned. Alex glanced at her. "Then why try again?" Lyra's gaze didn't waver. "Because we are out of time." Later that day, Alex gathered his gear. The village bustled behind him as the Amazons prepared, sharpening weapons, weaving protective armor from strange plant fibers, and whispering softly to one another. The tension was palpable. Xena approached with a small group of warriors. Each one carried a weapon, and their faces were marked with glowing paint. Alex adjusted the strap of his survival pack. "You sure this is the best idea?" "No," Xena said calmly. "But it is the only one." Lyra stepped forward, fastening a crystal blade to her hip. "You do not have to come," she said, meeting Alex's eyes. "This is not your fight." Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "I think I lost the chance to walk away the moment I crashed here." Xena nodded in quiet approval. "Then we leave at nightfall." As darkness fell, the small group slipped quietly into the jungle. The village lights faded behind them, swallowed by the dense foliage. The path to the ruins was treacherous, lined with twisted roots and vines that seemed to move on their own. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became. Alex noticed the plants growing darker, less vibrant, more twisted. Even the usual soft hum of the jungle was absent, replaced by an eerie stillness. He gripped his blade tighter. "I come like this." Lyra walked beside him, her eyes scanning the darkness. "The machine's influence grows the closer we get," she said softly. "This land is cursed by their presence." Alex smirked. "Good thing I never believed in curses." Xena led the way, stepping carefully over crumbling stones and collapsed structures. The ruins stretched before them, massive, ancient, and half-buried beneath the jungle's overgrowth. Tall pillars jutted out from the ground like broken bones, and strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Alex felt the weight of history pressing down on him. "This place, it's old," he muttered, trailing his fingers along a nearby wall. "Older than the village, isn't it?" Xena paused, turning toward him. "It was not built by us. This was the invaders' stronghold." Alex's eyes narrowed. "Then why haven't you destroyed it already?" Lyra stepped forward. "Because something guards it." Before Alex could respond, a faint clicking sound echoed through the ruins. Xena raised her hand, signaling for silence. Alex froze, gripping his blade tightly. From the shadows, the machines began to appear, silent and slow at first, but more emerge, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The group crouched behind a fallen pillar, watching as the machines patrolled the area. Alex whispered, "There's too many. We can't fight them all." Xena's voice echoed in his mind. "We will not fight unless we must. The core lies deeper within. That is our target." Alex nodded, but unease settled in his chest. As they slipped further into the ruins, he couldn't help but feel that the machines weren't the only threat waiting for them. Something else lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting. The final battle. The deeper Alex and the Amazons ventured into the ruins, the more the air seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The walls shimmered faintly, as if the ruins themselves were alive, watching, waiting. Alex's grip on his blade tightened. Every step echoed unnaturally, swallowed by the vast, dark corridors. The further they went, the more machines they saw, motionless but glowing faintly in the shadows. "They're dormant," Alex whispered, trailing behind Xena and Lyra. "For now." Lyra didn't glance back. "They can sense us. They are waiting." Xena pressed forward, her green eyes locked on the path ahead. The ruins opened into a massive chamber, unlike anything Alex had seen before. Crystalline structures jutted from the floor and ceiling, humming softly. At the center of the room lay the core, an enormous, glowing sphere suspended in the air by pulsing energy lines. But something else caught Alex's attention. Beneath the core, standing like a silent sentinel, was a machine unlike the others. Taller, broader, and more advanced, its armor gleamed under the sphere's glow. Its eyes flickered to life as they entered, locking directly onto Alex. Xena's voice broke the silence. "The Guardian." The machine shifted, stepping forward with a weight that made the entire room tremble. Alex clenched his jaw. "Of course there's a final boss." Lyra's voice was calm but firm. "We must destroy the core. The Guardian will protect it at all costs." Alex exhaled slowly, raising his blade. "Then we distract it." Before anyone could react, the Guardian lunged. Alex barely had time to duck as a massive arm swung over his head, shattering part of the stone wall behind him. The Guardian moved faster than any machine he'd faced before, its strikes precise and deadly. Xena and Lyra spread out, circling the machine. The Amazons moved with practiced ease, slashing at its legs, but their blades barely scratched its armor. Alex slid beneath the Guardian's next strike, driving his blade into one of the exposed joints beneath its arm. Sparks flew, and the machine staggered briefly. "Go for the weak spots," Alex shouted. Lyra's blade flashed, slicing along the machine's knee. Xena struck next, driving a crystal spear into the Guardian's side. The Guardian roared, its arms splitting apart into a massive energy cannon. Alex's eyes widened. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." Before the cannon could fire, Alex hurled himself at the machine, driving his blade deep into the cannon's core. The energy flickered wildly, destabilizing. "Now," Xena's voice echoed through his mind. Lyra sprinted toward the core, leaping over fallen debris. Alex disengaged from the Guardian, buying time by slashing at its legs. The machine's movements grew more erratic as it tried to fend off both Alex and Xena. Lyra reached the core, pressing her hand against the sphere. The crystal blade in her other hand began to glow, resonating with the energy lines connecting the core to the Guardian. Alex saw the pulse ripple through the air, like a shockwave in slow motion. The Guardian froze mid-strike, its red eyes flickering. Cracks began to form along its armor, glowing with the same energy as the core. Suddenly, the machine convulsed violently. Its arms dropped, and its body collapsed to the ground with a deafening crash. The core's glow began to dim, pulsing slower and slower until the light faded entirely. Alex wiped sweat from his brow, exhaling heavily. "Is it over?" Lyra lowered her blade, stepping back from the now dormant core. Xena approached the Guardian's remains, nudging it with her foot. For now. But the ruins may still hold secrets we do not know. Alex chuckled dryly. Yeah, I've had enough secrets for one lifetime. As the Amazons began collecting pieces of the Guardian, Alex stared at the darkened core. There was something unsettling about how easily it had fallen. Lyra seemed to sense his unease. You fought well, she said, stepping beside him. Alex nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the ruins. Something tells me this isn't the end. Lyra's eyes softened. No, but you are not alone in this fight. Alex glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Good to know. As the group made their way back to the village, Alex couldn't help but glance over his shoulder at the ruins fading into the distance. The machines were dormant, for now. But deep down, Alex knew this planet still held dangers they hadn't yet seen, and he would be ready for them.